right, good morning, everybody. Happy 4th of July weekend. I think from here on out, July 3rd will be named Hamilton Day. Thank God. On Disney Plus, everybody, Hamilton is streaming. And I'd like to thank the UK. I went on Twitter this morning, and I could not believe the number of people that have already watched this thing. Thank God I've already saw the play, so there's no spoiler alerts. He dies at the end, everybody. Let me ruin it for you. Aaron Burr shoots him. Kind of sucks. But hey, that's the story. With that, everyone, welcome to yet another edition of FinTech Insider. Grab your cup of coffee, and we will kick off here in just a minute. And if you don't have Disney Plus, by the way, find somebody who does, or be polite. How's that? Sign up. It's worth the money. You can see all of the you can see all of the Marvel movies out there. It'd be like my kids and rewatch them 80 times over and over and over again. It's worth the money, folks. So go ahead and spring it. All right, with that, let's jump in and let's get started today. Like I said, make sure you got a cup of coffee. We're heading into a long weekend. I know we're all going to need it. Good morning, folks. Welcome to the 65th episode of FinTech Insider, the Breakfast Show US. I'm Sam Maule, 11FS Managing Director of North America. I will be your host for this morning's show. Please do let us know where you're at in the world. There's a comment section, so comment. Let's use it. You got questions, throw them in there. You got great links for us to look at, throw them in there. You want to talk about Hamilton, feel free. I'll comment on that all day long. Most importantly, let us know where you're at in the world. We'd love to give you a shout out, and also subscribe. Go out to 11FS page on LinkedIn, subscribe there, subscribe to our podcast, FinTech Insider, so you don't miss any episodes that come out. Make sure you share, please share the link to this stream. If you look down at the bottom next to all those emojis, you see a little share button that you can click on. Click on that, let your network know that you're watching this. It really helps us. All right, first off, before we start, 3 news stories from the past 24 hours that caught my attention and should have yours. First of all, CNN reports America's recovery from the pandemic recession could last through the better part of the next decade, according to the Congressional Budget Office's 10-year forecast published Thursday. And yes, I did say through the next decade, through 2030. The COVID-19 outbreak and subsequent lockdown has brought the economy to a stop, and even though states are slowly reopening, it'll be a tough next decade as the country recovers from the recessions, according to the CBO. On top of that, the forecast is riddled with uncertainty in terms of the virus itself. Changes to consumer behavior and policy responses, the CBO cautioned. The CBO now forecasts the unemployment rate will remain above its pre-pandemic level, which was at a near 50-year low of 3.5% in February, by the way, folks, until after 2030, the end of the current forecasting range, the CBO predicts. The 10-year average unemployment rate will be 6.1%, up from 4.2% projected in January. Meanwhile, real U.S. gross domestic product, the broadest measure of the economy, will be an average 3.4% lower over the next decade than was originally predicted in January. It will take until 2028 until GDP will grow in line with long-term trend growth again. And that's not all. The recession could nearly quadruple the federal budget deficit this year, pushing it to a whopping $3.7 trillion, according to projections from April. These are projections. These are projections. Could it change? Yes. Let's just be hopeful it doesn't change for the worse. And like I said, let's do our part to get this ended. Wear your damn masks, people. Next story, The Telegraph. They report 8 major Canadian banks said yesterday they would heed the call by other major global advertisers to boycott Facebook, demanding the social network do more to tackle racism and other hate speech. These banks include Scotiabank, BMO, RBC, CIBC, TD, National Bank of Canada, and others, according to the AFP, that they would support the hashtag Stop Hate for Profit movement launched by social justice activists. The initiative, spearheaded by organizations like the NAACP and Anti-Defamation League, began in response to growing anti-Semitic and anti-Black rhetoric found on the social media platform. Participating brands will suspend all advertising on Facebook for the month of July. As of this morning, this doesn't include the largest banks in the U.S., at least as far as I could personally tell, because I went out and looked. So damn it, step up. Hundreds of companies around the world have joined a temporary ad boycott against Facebook, but CEO Mark Zuckerberg says he's not worried and has no intention of changing his policies, according to a new report. Zuckerberg said the boycott is more of a PR issue than one that will hurt the social media giant's bottom line, according to a report Wednesday. which cited a transcript of Mark Zuckerberg gave at an employees-only virtual town hall meeting where he said, "We're not going to change our policies or approach or anything because of a threat to a small percent of revenue or to any percent of our revenue." As Tom Peters said in our show, I believe it was Wednesday, and I mean this politely, kiss my ass, Mark Zuckerberg. Folks at Facebook, I know a lot of friends that work there, and I know a lot of friends on their payments team and everything else. They got a lot of talent and a lot of different opinions. I will say it again about Mark Zuckerberg until he changes. I'm seriously not impressed at all with him, and my personal opinion, but it's also my show, so screw it. And last but not least, Uber financial services leader Peter Hazelhurst has stepped down from his position as the rideshare company has put its start to a digital wallet on hold, Bloomberg reported. For those that attended Money 2020 back in October, we used to have conferences, everybody. Remember that? I would say that Peter Hazelhurst was one of the keynote speakers. Uber Pay in their wallet was, or Uber Money in their wallet was the headline of that conference. It's fast as happened post-COVID. So the company is instead going to focus more on ride sharing and food delivery instead of the planned financial expansions. In an email, the Uber CEO said the company isn't prioritizing several finance-related projects such as credit card, a digital wallet, and instant payments for drivers. He said he understood Peter's decision to pursue something more aligned with his passion and initial ambitions, Bloomberg reported. It is fascinating to see what is surviving and what isn't coming out of the COVID crisis, or I should say in the midst of the COVID crisis. However, I will say there is one company that continues to do extremely well and is well positioned for a pandemic such as this, and that is Grasshopper Bank. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So today we're super excited to be joined by Judith Erwin, the CEO of Grasshopper Bank. On today's show, we're going to talk about how Grasshopper Bank came about and how we as an industry can work to increase equality in the financial space. Judith, how are you?
Great. Thank you, Sam. Good morning.
I'm assuming New York is where you're at right now?
New York, up on the Hudson River.
All right, good for you. Got out of the city, I hope.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. I've got a niece that lives in Harlem that's been riding this whole thing up on about 126th Street. It has not been fun. Yeah.
No, probably a 600 square foot apartment. That makes it tough.
And yes. A 5-floor walk up, by the way, no elevator.
Gosh.
It was so much fun moving her in. A girl from South Georgia who now lives and breathes and loves New York. Even through all of this, still has Harlem is an incredible neighborhood. The diversity there is incredible. So let's talk about Grasshopper Bank. The very first thing I want to ask you, though, I read this and I want to know if it's true. This was named after Admiral Grace Hopper. Is that true?
That's correct.
I love that.
She was, an early pioneer, early computer scientist. She invented the word bug. Believe it or not, because there was a fly in the computer, and that's where it came from. But she was just such an unusual woman, really broke the mold, and so we wanted to honor her. And we didn't want to sound like a run-of-the-mill bank. The one thing about grasshoppers you may not know is that they are physically unable to jump backwards or sideways, only forward. And so that's our motto, only forward.
Okay, everybody, I swear, in the comment section, did anybody actually know that? Because I think you were lying. I had no clue. Grace Hopper she should be a hero of everybody that's in technology. Yep. I'll flat out say that. What is the awards show that's done every year?
The Grace Hopper conference.
Oh, I love that. Yeah.
We sponsored it last year, and it was really chilling because there were about 60,000 women from all over the country, all ages. Very thrilling event. I recommend it.
Yeah, Dr. Sue Black, who's a very good friend of 11FS and who I love from the UK, was there and won an award, if I remember right. I think it was in Orlando, if I remember right.
That's right. That's right.
Huge supporter, by the way, and love it. So before we jump in even more around Grasshopper, let's talk a little bit about you, because you have an interesting background prior to Grasshopper. You were with Comerica, so a very large bank, everybody, in the U.S. But then you spent quite a bit of time with Square One, right?
That's right. There were a team of us. We were actually at Imperial Bank in the late 90s in California, acquired by Comerica. And then a team of us spun out in 2005 to start really a pure play in this space. And that was a success, but took a long time because we had the financial crisis in the middle of it. But we went public in 2014, was a year later. And for a brief period, I was actually a liquid entrepreneur. Not many bankers can say that.
No, they can't. Yeah. No, they cannot. It's a
And
great
then,
experience, isn't it? I mean, for what you do today, it's a fantastic experience.
it was a great start, and then was convinced that there was a need, and not just from a big hole in the space, because a number of banks at that size were sold. But at the time, I knew venture banking was not scalable on today's technology. You get to about 2 billion in loans, and you start having problems because it's a messy loan portfolio. And at the time we were thinking about this, technologies were suddenly becoming available that were bank ready, that could help us solve that problem. And the other really factor, when you're considering starting a new business, you of course evaluate competition.
Yeah.
And I looked at, there's a lot of banks in New York City, a lot of banks in New York. There's 4,700 banks in the country. And when I looked at the banks in New York, what I was so striking was how very alike the management team looked. The same suits and ties, same ages. And then when you looked at the board, they were a generation older. And I was really stumped because I, of course, knew many women and people of color, very talented in banking, and they just weren't making it to that level. And I knew that that wasn't right, and felt that would be something we could change as well. So we raised 133 million. It took a long time to get approval, a year and a half. We were the first digital bank to be approved by the OCC, and the first venture bank to be approved. And that just took them a much longer time. But, to their credit, they worked very hard at it. And I find them to be very hardworking partners at this point.
And I'm glad you brought that up. So for our listeners and for the folks watching this that don't live in the U.S., getting a banking license in the U.S. post the 2008 crisis that we went through was damn near next to impossible. They just were not given, right? I mean, getting charters, anything like that, it did not happen. And we had the CEO of Borrow Money on in an earlier episode.
Colin.
Yeah, we had Colin on. I love Colin. We had Colin on a couple weeks ago, and he talked about the purpose when he started Borrow was we were going to go for that. We needed to be able to hold deposits. We're going to be more than a front end, and it's not easy. You're laughing. It's an arduous process, is it not, Judith?
It is an arduous process. I think we were the 8th or 9th bank approved since, and that had been more than 10 years. And part of it is that it's also difficult from an economic standpoint with interest rates near zero. And you layer on the fact that we were not going to go the standard path from a technology perspective. And, when you're doing things for the first time, they don't always work the first time. Just a little tip. And so that also added to the time. But we ultimately were successful. We're stubborn. And we saw the value proposition. There's the big, and I can keep talking or I can wait for a specific question.
No, I love it. I agree with you. I mean, I think, Colin said that, right? I asked him I've asked a couple people this. I said, when you're doing a startup or you're doing any company, what's one of the 1 or 2 key attributes, characteristics you have to have? And tenacity always comes up.
That's right.
Always comes up. You have, especially if you've been around banking. Judith, I'm going to compare you to somebody because I know Ann Oden at Starling very, very well. She's a good friend. And Ann came out of the industry. And if I can say a couple things about Ann, she is tenacious. She's stubborn. She had a vision and she stuck to it. And you remind me of a New York version
I
Anne.
have not met Anne, but she has been a model for me, I
Oh,
will say.
excellent. She's
So
a force of nature, and you're going to meet Anne after this because I'm going to introduce you.
great.
You touched on this earlier, though, when you were talking about Grasshopper and putting together around, you're looking around New York and I'm looking at different banks, and you look at their board, you look at their senior leadership team, and they do all kind of look the same. They look like me if I was shaved and had a suit and tie on, which I used to do, by the way. I mean, I haven't been doing this part of my life, that long. I used to be that guy. When you look at your team, I went to the Grasshopper website this morning and went through the team. The sheer level of diversity, women, people of color, young, old, the whole mix. Yeah, you deserve an applause just for that. So obviously that was purposeful, right?
It was, and you know what? It wasn't hard, Sam.
I thank everybody. Let's say that again. What was it, Judith? It wasn't
hard. It wasn't
Thank
hard.
you.
It's I do talk to people, and one of the things I'm really concerned about with COVID is the sustainability of these initiatives around Me Too and Black Lives Matter, because we all go back to our norms.
Yeah.
And but this was important to us 4 years ago when we started, and so we're not new to the game. And I've had people tell me that they can't find diverse people with the
Yes.
credentials, and it's just so wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And part of it is you have to look like a place that people want to work.
Yeah.
And so I'm very fortunate to have a very diverse network and a lot of allies, and they helped bring me talent, and talent came. Grasshopper is a place that you come to on purpose. You don't come to accidentally, because it is not like working at a regular bank. It's not 9 to 5. It's not a rote job. We are creating as we go. And like I said, and we have to have clients who are good with that, that they're willing to co-build this bank with us, because it will be a little rocky from time to time. But everyone's going to have my cell phone number, and I'm going to be here if they need me. And this market really needs a player that is focused on not just the big clients, but the tiny ones.
So y'all heard that. We had Jill Castillo on before at Citizens Bank of Edmond, who we love to death. And that's the one thing that Jill goes on Twitter all the time and just gives her phone number out. She'll let somebody say they had an issue, and Jill's like, cool, give me a call or DM me or talk to me.
Yep.
And the idea of having a CEO say, yeah, here's my number. Let's talk a little bit about your customers, if you don't mind. Who is a typical customer that you have?
Well, so we live in the innovation economy. That's kind of a generic phrase, I know, but I've been in this business since the mid-90s in the Bay Area. I moved to New York 11 years ago. It's startups, so it can be a solopreneur, someone with an idea. I picture a woman and her cat in a studio in Chelsea who's got the next best UX design, to a Series B expansion stage company who is moving beyond some venture support, maybe just about to reach profitability. We work with nonprofits as well who are supporting this ecosystem. So, the urban leagues, Twigo, all the accelerators. We also bank the investors themselves. So we have a special love for emerging managers, because it's such a tough road. That's where diversity is going to happen. And it's when we started Square One, same model, emerging managers. And the clients that we started banking in 2005 became the top tier firms a decade later. And so we believe that to be true today. So really anyone, an entrepreneur that is looking to disrupt things. And I don't care if you're going to have venture. I will help you if you're a bootstrap company. So we're all about raising all boats and creating. The point of our technology was to reduce the cost of providing banking services so that I can service the smallest client and not lose money, which means I can continue to invest in those smallest clients. That's the problem with the big banks. So we did PPP the second round because we were pretty unhappy with the lack of access to the small companies. And we did a loan as small as 19,000, Sam. We didn't do a ton. We did 60 or so, but those were 60 companies that live today because we helped them get this loan.
That was my frustration with PPP overall. The loan amounts and the limits, you know, that were set weren't realistic. That wasn't Main Street. You know, Main Street needed 10 grand, 15 grand, 20 grand, 30 grand to keep the lights on. You know, it wasn't.
That's right.
It's amazing the number of loans that went out to companies, and we saw this in the first round, but the number of companies that were incredibly solvent, right? We're fine and cash rich. And I do understand we did this all on the fly. I get it, man. I tell you what, Judith, the amount of love you're getting in the comments section, you'd be embarrassed if you could see this stuff. Armenia just said, "You have my heart." I'm sure she was talking about you and not me. Kurt, Kurt's a really good friend. Kurt's the president of Tab Bank out in Utah. And
nice.
Kurt just put in quotes, "A place that you come to on purpose." I love that quote. So Kurt, don't steal that. But no, it's a good point. So a question has come in. Of course, it did from Sidharhar, who is a founder out in San Francisco. So he's a tech founder. He's right in your sweet spot of the type of customer you have. And he says, "Look, I love the idea of an entrepreneur-focused bank. That said, what services beyond core bank account features and cash burn tools do you plan on launching to address founder pain points like accounting, payroll, benefits?"
It's a great question. So, so that was another big reason behind our technology. We're finishing up the table stakes this year. So we've just got a couple more things before we pretty much have 100% of the core banking capabilities. But our future is all around data. And so our front end is in the cloud. Our back end is also in the cloud in a non-traditional core called Temenos, a European-based company. Our middle layer is our secret sauce, a BLAPI, business layer API, where it's going to allow us to integrate and disintegrate fintech partners. We gather that data and we will put it in format so we can give back to the client, because my view is I don't own this data, my clients own this data, but it's not useful to them.
You sure you're a banker?
Long-time banker. Long-time banker.
Just saying.
You know, I should get paid for providing that to them, but that remains to be seen. And so we have a very long roadmap, beginning with in our current app. There's a cash burn calculator that, as we begin gathering the data at the end of this year, that tool becomes predictive based on your payment patterns. Our goal is, if you're a borrower, you give us your projections. We put that into the data lake, and ultimately we get to the point where we have your transactions, match data to your projections and tell you when you're on or off track and give you advice. We can calculate how much Google ad spend. You know, this is the type of thing. And if you are an investor, our goal is that you can come in. Let's say you've got 5 of your portfolio companies that bank with Grasshopper. You would have a dashboard of all 5 of them in their current position. And so that's the future vision. As I said, it took us longer to do new stuff than I thought. So we're finishing up the basics this year. And that is the roadmap. But it's going to be co-built with our clients.
You know what's important, though, and I'm glad you said that, we're finishing up the basics. I see so many tech companies, especially in fintech, that don't pay enough attention to the basics, right? That they get to the what's the word I want? David Breyer, our CEO, says this all the time. There's a steak in the sizzle. And that's what 11FS tries to do, right? Try to give you that core, the basics, but the sizzle with it, right? Or that salt thing that they does in Turkey. I love that guy, the salt guy. You want the bells and whistles, but the basics matters, especially when it comes to financial services. Man, you're getting a lot of questions. I got to jump to these. Derek Sutton from Auto Books in Detroit. Love you, Derek. Judith, how have regulators commented on the depository relationship of startups? Just curious. Same ration of loan and deposits?
It took them a while to understand why we'd lend money to startups. From a depository basis, because we've got the most current generation of anti-money laundering, know your client. We have online account opening, so we solve a lot of the issues the troubles bank get into right up front, and then we have predictive tools on the other side to try. The big problem for banks in fraud management is false positives.
Right.
And so we will use machine learning to stop that from becoming a big issue. But we use technology so that we can actually have a human interacting with clients. Technology is not meant to replace the human element. It's meant to replace the rote tasks, the things that don't require brains.
Exactly.
So I think that that's a big part of what the regulators see, is that we have a deep understanding of the entrepreneur's journey, not just because we've worked in this space for a long time, but because we've lived it.
Yeah.
I personally guaranteed all of our equipment until we got funding. There's nothing we don't know about it. Hope that answers your question.
Yeah, and so 2 more quick ones, and I'll do these real rapid fire to you because we're coming up on the hour. So Kurt, again at Tab Bank in Utah, the 2 of you should definitely connect. How is your core built that allows for low-cost solution for microtransactions? So again, you use Temenos as a vendor. They're great vendor for core banking.
So it's a software license, and they don't charge us by the drink. So I own my data.
Well done.
Yeah. It's modular. So that's really how we do it, is that we're not paying per transaction.
Yeah.
So it's all automated.
All right, next one and last one I have to do. And I think this is from Kamari. And Kamari, I hope I'm saying your name right. Would you eventually add in liquidity services for businesses with automated financials to be used for equity crowdfunding?
I think it's a really interesting idea. It's not on our roadmap until late 2021 to be considered, because we have so many things to build. But that being said, our architecture is such that we can pick up projects at any time, like we did PPP. We did that in 2 weeks. And so we have a number of things we're thinking about. So any of you guys who have thoughts, I welcome you emailing. And, we've got a great engineering team, great CTO, and we are thinking about how to support fintech companies with our Rails. So it is in our thought process.
There you go. And again, you work with your customers to build out the bank. Right. So they'll drive. There's a great thing about customers when you actually talk to them. They'll help you drive your roadmap. Right. It's amazing how that works if you actually talk to them. And like I said, you give out your phone number all the time. So there you go. Well, hey, Judith, thanks for being here. What's the best place? I've got like 8 people in this stream minimum that want to reach out to you. So where's the best place for them to connect?
Judith at grasshopper.bank.
All right, there you go. Easy as that, Kurt.
Great.
So you don't have to ask me for an introduction. Kurt will reach out to you. All right, everybody. That wraps up this week, man. It's been a great week. I'll flat out say it, and Judith ended it on a high note. It's been a really great week of content. I hope you all enjoyed it. If you missed any, you can go out to our YouTube channel. We put a playlist out on 11FS of every single one of these. You can see Tom Peters walk away twice in an interview, just leave to go get some books and us as much as I did. You never get 2 sailors on a podcast at the same time. It's never good. That wraps up this week, everybody. Next week's schedule, we're gonna post it. We got a great lineup. As always, don't hesitate to reach out to me. You can reach out to me on Twitter at Sam Maule, or here on LinkedIn, or sam at 11fs.com if you have an idea for a guest, or just reach out directly to the producers. Hannah, Tobias, and team do a great job. That's at breakfastshow at 11fs.com. Everybody have a great 4th of July weekend, and wear your damn masks. We'll see you Monday.